Oh my God, I have power again. I'm so excited. See my little, that's right, I'm not shaving. Because who cares? Who the fuck cares anymore, right? Anyway, I was right in the middle of a special broadcast when I got interrupted by the the power getting off. But I got to bring this to you guys. So while we're freezing in Texas, by the way, Governor Abbott's declared a national emergency, and Joe Biden has acquiesced to his demands. Governor. So glad. So first, the conservatives were blaming it on the wind turbines. And they were just like, oh, well, they don't need Joe Biden. I mean, I don't need Joe Biden. Who needs Joe Biden? Turns out we do need the president of the United States. He's got the power of the FEMA. What is it? The disaster relief. We kind of need some disaster relief, guys. We're freezing our asses off. I hate Joe Biden too, Governor Abbott. And I understand why you'd be waffling on this. But I'm glad you made that decision. Let's move on. In the future, my friends, Democrats and Republicans, why vote for him? I don't think so. Let's not. Let's just not. What do you think, guys? Anyway, while the crisis in Texas and the South is going on, while income inequality is at its heights, while the coronavirus ravages our lands, the U.S. lawmakers call for 9/11 style commission to investigate Capitol riots. Democrats and Republicans both voice support for panel to make sure it never happens again. That's right, guys. They're on the current events. I mean, the Democrats and Republicans, do they give a shit about us? No. Do they want to stick it to Trump still, even though he's not in office? Yes. I mean, are we important at all? Not at all. We're not important at all, guys. Special report from The Guardian. 9/11 commission report. Now watch this, guys. We'll comment on it later. Hopefully I'll still have power.
This week, President Biden will make his first official trip as commander-in-chief to Wisconsin and Michigan to discuss COVID relief and vaccine distribution. But the shadow of the deadly January 6th assault on the Capitol still looms large. Now Congress is looking to form a special commission to investigate the attacks. So Ed O'Keefe is at the White House. Ed, even after, the acquittal over the impeachment, we're still left with a lot of unanswered questions about what exactly happened on September 6th and how we got there. What do we expect this commission to accomplish?
That's a good question, and a lot of those details are yet to be sorted out, but it does seem that some of the nuts and bolts of the decisions made ahead of time are likely to be parts of this. Look, commissions like this are rare, in part because we don't have violence like this in the United States that often, but also because they usually require bipartisan support. In this case, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the panel will be modeled on the commission formed after the 9/11 attacks back in 2001. That was a bipartisan group that investigated the circumstances leading up to those attacks. The recommendations from that panel led to, among other things, the creation of the Director of National Intelligence, which oversees all intelligence agencies. But one of the potential challenges with this commission is that, unlike the 9/11 attacks, the Capitol riot had partisan political motivations, and most members of Congress seem to have made up their minds about what led to it. But this also means that at least part of Washington will still be dealing with the fallout from the Capitol attacks and former President Donald Trump's role in them, as the current president, Joe Biden, tries pushing forward with his own agenda. At the top of that agenda, the pandemic and economic relief from it. He heads to Wisconsin tonight, his first official trip on Air Force One as president, first official trip west as president, to tout the American Rescue Plan that he's pushing through Congress. He's hoping to make a case to voters in a state that he narrowly won that they should be supporting this legislation and telling their lawmakers to do so. There, of course, remains big Republican criticism about the size and scope of the plan, Anne-Marie.
So let us talk about what the Biden administration would prefer that we talk about, what's on their agenda. You touched on some of that, of course, COVID relief. The Biden administration today announced an extension of foreclosures for homeowners to prevent evictions during the pandemic, among other things. What more do we know about this?
Yeah, so one of the first executive orders or actions taken by the new president back on January 20th was to extend this through the end of March. Now he's extending them through the end of June, and these are for federally backed mortgages. Roughly, I believe, 2 million or so people across the country have them. It's designed to continue to provide some at least temporary relief to those who are dealing with that, and it also provides up to 6 months of what they call additional mortgage payment forbearance, or just giving a pass on payments in 3-month increments for borrowers who entered forbearance on or before June 30th of last year. So again, these are modest moves made by the administration, the kinds of things they can do to provide relief to struggling Americans who have either lost their job or may have had to scale back amid the pandemic.
You touched on the fact that the president was heading west. This is, of course, coming as there are a handful of states that are looking to lift mask mandates. We're still in the middle of this pandemic. We're still struggling to get the vaccines into the arms of enough people to turn this thing around. What message is President Biden expected to bring to the American people?
Well, and in this case, Wisconsin has had a heck of a time trying to sort out whether or not they're going to have a mask mandate. The Democratic governor, the Republican legislature continue to go back and forth on this. He will, of course, do what he's done since he was a candidate and now as president, and that is promote wearing masks, social distancing, doing whatever Americans can to, help out their fellow neighbors and fellow Americans and protect themselves from this pandemic. But it is also expected that he's going to take some time to explain the details of his nearly $2 trillion American Rescue Plan. The House is still working on it, expected to put a little more of the details together this week so that the House can vote on it as early as next week. And then following that, it's supposed to head over to the Senate, where, among others, Republican senators, including Wisconsin's Ron Johnson, are strongly opposed to the legislation. Johnson is one of those who could decide to run for re-election in 2 years or hang it up and retire. And so sending the president to his home state to talk about this, that is partly by design, to go to states that he narrowly won, to thank them, but also to put pressure on local Republicans who may be skeptical of his plan. Later in the week, he goes to Michigan to tour a Pfizer vaccine distribution facility, expected to talk there about the vaccination programs across the country and, of course, continue touting his pandemic relief bill.
We started off talking about this investigation into what happened on January 6th. The thing about President Biden is he's really tried to avoid making any comment on the impeachment trial. When he's asked directly, he gives answers, but they're pretty vague. Has this ultimately put him in a pretty good position because he can just sort of hit the ground running, just keep chugging along without any distractions about the impeachment or about what happened on January 6th?
Well, I don't know that he can completely chug along, because certainly it's going to affect the pace of the work he'd like to see Congress get done. By finishing up the trial over the weekend, the COVID relief debate can continue on schedule in the House and then later in the Senate. The goal is to have it all done by March 14th, when unemployment benefits expire, and it's looking like that's going to happen. If some kind of commission, however, gets underway and starts, trudging through all sorts of things that went on before and on January 6th, at some point they may have to come to the administration to ask for information, to talk to people who are still in government, and that inevitably bumps up against the White House to some extent and might require them to engage. But because he wasn't here officially, because he is not a senator who had to vote on this stuff, because he's the one sort of focused on the future, you're right, it allows him to separate himself a bit from it, stay above the fray, and sort of appear, at least to voters, to Americans across the country, that he's focused on the more urgent priority, of course, dealing with the pandemic. And it's going to be a challenge for Congress, too, because if that commission established by Congress starts to sort of suck up all the time and attention in this town, it could further, ruffle feathers and make things more difficult for Congress to get done.
Ed O'Keefe, great talking to you. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
It was made into one of the great
magical, mystical. So, guys, what in the world? Good. So, guys, like I said, while we are in the middle of 2 different crises right now, and I can only handle one at a time. Got the COVID pandemic, which they think is going to be cured by the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine. I guess they put more money into Pfizer than Moderna because they're always talking about Pfizer. Again, government contracts with Pfizer and Moderna, also involving our military. So think about that when you get injected with that thing. Our military, it's military grade vaccine. We're also getting hit by sub-zero temperatures, with a system that wasn't in place, I guess, for such things. Meanwhile, conservatives are blaming wind turbines that are frozen, and Governor Abbott was blaming, the lack of preparation on the part of the electric companies, the electric grid. Don't you guys find it interesting that a small few, again, in this country, a small few have the power to decide who gets power and who doesn't? Is this really a first world country? No. I'm looking it up on my phone, guys. I found out this is a second world country. We are a second world country, not a first world country. The income inequality, the unpreparedness of pandemics, sub-zero temperatures. Turns out we are not the richest country on the face of the earth anymore. Maybe that's why we keep on invading Middle Eastern countries. Who knows? But in the midst of all this, guys, the Congress has to get down to January 6th insurrections. They're still not finished, guys. Millions in poverty. Millions starving. Still, from The Guardian, Donald Trump's acquittal in his impeachment on charges that he incited the insurrection has organized a panel to be created in the aftermath, similar to the 9/11 terrorist attacks, which review what caused the atrocity laid out in recommendations. Now, for those of you who don't remember, this panel, this 9/11 panel, came up with the Patriot Act. It came up with this bipartisan, by the way. And bipartisan only means when you are fucked over by both the Republicans and the Democrats. That's what bipartisan means. Bipartisan means that all of our rights are being taken away in a bipartisan fashion. Last time they took away our Fourth Amendment, they tried to take away our first. Habeas corpus, mens rea, produce the body, proof, innocent till proven guilty, and of course, a trial. Guantanamo Bay, nobody had a trial. You were called a terrorist. They sent you to Guantanamo Bay to be tortured. We'll find out if you're a terrorist then, after we waterboard you. So now they're organizing yet another 9/11 commission style. Is that going to help the freedom of the American people? Is that going to help us promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of our liberty and our posterity? Is that going to help us, be the country that we were supposed to be? The shining beacon on a hill. Now, they're doing this in the midst of two crises because they don't want us to know what they're doing. That's why Tommy Nation Politics is here. I'm here to shine a light on all the bullshit bipartisan legislature. This isn't even legislature, by the way. This is going to be a bipartisan panel. I'm reading on, guys, from The Guardian, like I said. Democratic House prosecutors laid out their case that former president stoked the attack with violent rhetoric and dangerous insistence, but to no avail. They're adding he was attempting to hold Ted Cassidy, whatever, this Republican, Bill Cassidy, right, a senator of Louisiana who has been censured by following fellow Republicans in his home state, added, because this builds the basis, so this will never happen again. Yes, I don't ever want it to happen again, guys. We were so close to actually holding these guys accountable. This insurrection. I mean, do I really give a shit that, let's just not even go there, guys. I don't want to get in trouble. But all I have to say is I don't really care about why these people were protesting, but they should have finished the job. Maybe, hypothetically. Here we are. Moving on. So, Mitch McConnell, who voted no on he voted to acquit Donald Trump. The people who stormed this building believe they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president, even though he voted no. Yeah. McConnell, who insisted that he voted against the impeachment because Trump was no longer in office, after refusing to hold that trial, while Trump was still in office, statements on Saturday seemed to punt the responsibility of holding Trump responsible to civil courts. So they want it to be a civil matters, guys. The Democrats, they're so bitter. They're still beating a dead horse. And the Republicans, they just don't want to be held responsible. Okay? They hate Donald Trump just as much as the Democrats. Let me tell you this again. The Republicans hate Donald Trump just as much as the Republicans. Not the Republican voters. The Republican legislatures. All of the people, all of these people, they're being bought by the same donors, the same oligarchs, to funnel the wealth to the 1%. Donald Trump was already an oligarch. He said, if you want something done right, you better do it yourself. Jumped in the race. It was supposed to be Hillary Clinton's time. They all thought it would be, even the Republicans, even Mitch McConnell. And now, Republican voters decided that Donald Trump was going to be president. Now, Mitch McConnell has to pretend that he goes along with Republican voters, even though Mitch McConnell hates the Republican voters. Mitch McConnell thinks the Republican voters are scum, including his own voters. And he wants nothing more than Donald Trump to suffer. But he can't be held responsible with that because he's afraid of the Republican voters because they have guns and they storm Capitol buildings. So that's why he voted no, because he knew that if he voted yes, he'd be censured like all these other Republicans who were censured. He doesn't want to be any way connected to this. He's like Pontius Pilate washing his hands. But does Mitch McConnell want Donald Trump to go down? Hell to the yeah. Sent a letter to Nancy Pelosi and to her Democratic colleagues saying it's clear that we will need to establish a 9/11 type commission to examine and report the facts. So Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi working hand in hand for the good of the empire to forego the income inequality, the harrowing sub-zero temperatures, the COVID pandemic, and all of the things that actually matter to the American people, forego all of these things, and hand in hand, try and endeavor to destroy Donald Trump even further, even though he's not even in office anymore. Like I said, guys, this is the most bitter shit I've ever witnessed in my life. And all I want is my $2,000 check. Why can't y'all go hand in hand on that? Why don't y'all shake some hands on my $2,000 stimulus checks? Hashtag what is stimulus? Well, nope. We're going 9/11 style commissions. So I'm just warning you guys what's coming. After these little snowstorms, it's going to come the real storm. It's going to come the storm on the Constitution. Are you going to be ready? Are you going to be free thinking, innovative, and totally open-minded? I hope so. Keep watching Tommy Nation Politics.